for two reasons. One, I was ashamed and I didn't want to talk about it. And two, I also was determined to figure out how to do it on my own. I am a person who is self-reliant, and I said, I got myself into this. I'm going to try to get myself out of it. And I knew I needed to remove myself from that situation, right? It wasn't that I blamed anybody for my choices or any of my friends or any of that. I made my own choices, but removing yourself from a situation.
Welcome to the Break Free Podcast. I am your host, David Mancilla. We dedicate this time and space to celebrate exceptional leaders that are changing this world for a better place by adding product services to a world that is broken and is in need of light. So today we have with us one of those exceptional leaders, Kerry Siggins. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad to be here, David.
Kerry, for the audience, can you please tell me your full name, where do you live, and what do you do for a living?
Yeah, so Kerry Siggins, and I live in Durango, Colorado, one of the most beautiful places on earth. And I am the CEO of a company called StoneAge Holdings. The company's core business makes hydroblasting equipment, but we dabble in robotics and IoT product development and all kinds of fun technology.
That's crazy. Like, how do you do from one end to all the way down to IoT product technology?
Well, we are building industrial cleaning robots. And so we started down a path of developing our first IoT robot, probably 5 or 6 years ago. And it really opened my eyes to what the possibility of smart devices and connected solutions would be in industrial manufacturing. And so we decided to invest in it and diversify. And so it's been a really interesting up and down ride. We first started getting into it in 2020, and then all the supply chain disruptions were really wreaked havoc on anybody trying to develop connected devices. You couldn't get chips and boards and all kinds of electrical components. So I have learned a lot as we have started to dip our toe in the water of this type of technology.
You know, it's so funny because if I would have known that you were into technology too, I would have invited you to my other podcast. I have a podcast called Leaders in Tech, and that's where we talk about IoT and we talk about AI and computer science and how that's making this world a better place too.
Well, we'll have to do that one too. Yeah.
Exactly. Or if you have a CTO, we can make a panel or something.
Let's do it. Yes.
It's important for people to know. Like, imagine you have a cleaning services company, and then you are actually completely disrupting the market with intelligent devices.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Well, I'd be happy to.
I don't even know who has this crazy idea to open a chip-based product in the worst product silicon pandemic in the world, because the pandemic was for humans but also affected microchips. There was a huge scarcity of microchips.
Yeah, it was tough times, that's for sure. And people are still coming out of it saying, is this the time that I should start developing these types of products again? And it's not easy. There's lots of disruptions that happened that made product development hard across all kinds of industries. So it's going to be interesting to see what the next 5 years looks like.
For sure. And we have to be ready for it. And we can talk about it a little bit later, but I would like to get deep into your career. Because your company is not small at all, and you are responsible for many lives. Mm-hmm. So I know it takes a lot of courage and lessons learned to get where you are. And this is what this podcast is about. I mean, we're celebrating you, but at the same time, people that listen to this podcast are people that want to become like you, people that see themselves as a top leader in an organization, and what does it take to get there? I remember when I was in my 20s, late 20s, early 30s, I was just hitting management at that time. I'm like, how can I be the guy that is responsible for the whole thing? And it's a calling, it's not for everybody, because getting there is the hardest. So let's go back in time. Where were you in your last year of high school? And what did you decide to do right after that?
Oh, my last year of high school. I was a wild child, if you can believe that. So my last year of high school was spent skipping school as much as possible. But part of that was because I had gotten into Colorado School of Mines, which is one of the United States' top engineering schools. And I was originally planning on studying chemical engineering there. So I had gotten my acceptance letter from Mines. I had a scholarship to play softball. And so I just decided I was going to do as little as possible before I had to go into the really, really tough environment that engineering school brings, especially a small, very focused school like Colorado School of Mines. So I was having fun and really, really looking forward to, getting out of the town that I was born and raised in, and head off to engineering school.
Wow. So how did you decide to go to engineering school in the first place? Like most people going to university not knowing what to do. I mean, that's why you have this common year, right?
Yeah, I don't usually do anything unplanned. I'm a very outcomes focused person, and I like to orchestrate the outcomes that I want. And so for me, although I didn't understand it as much at the time as I do now, it was not really about getting the engineering degree. It was more around that engineers made a lot of money when they got when you graduated from college. I grew up relatively poor, single mom, school teacher. We didn't have very much, and I watched how hard my mom struggled, and her commitment to building herself, her career, and also taking care of her family on her own really motivated me to choose a different path. Even though I have a ton of respect for everything she did, I said, I don't want my life to be that hard. So part of the motivation for me to go to engineering school was because engineers made a lot of money after they graduated, all the wrong reasons. But I didn't know that then. And I was really good at math and science. And so I had my high school calculus teacher really encouraged me to consider engineering school. The other option I was going to take was journalism, because I am a writer, and writing is my true passion, which how could you be more opposite, right? Writing, journalism school, and engineering school. But I ultimately picked engineering because I thought that it would help catapult me into the life that I wanted to create for myself.
That's wonderful. It's funny that you said you didn't want to have a hard life like that, but now you know that life is hard regardless.
It is,
because
that's for sure.
Just going to engineering school is torture.
It's so hard. Oh my God, it's so hard.
I have 2 computer science degrees, and I know what it takes, what it's like.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah. I was young and naive. That's for sure.
It's funny because what my dad always said was, you can go to school and have a really hard time in university for 5 years, and then your life will change forever.
Yeah.
Or
absolutely.
You can have a hard time for your entire life.
Exactly.
And he was
words of wisdom right there.
So right. What did you do after engineering school?
Well, I figured out in engineering school I didn't want to be an engineer. But I stuck it out, and I graduated from Mines in 2001. And, it's interesting because I was pretty lost at the time. I graduated with 2 degrees in 4 years while playing softball and working 2 to 3 jobs. So all I did was work, do. And I didn't take a whole lot of time to ask myself, who am I? What do I really want? What is the purpose of all of this? I was too busy just trying to succeed. And in some cases, just trying to survive Mines. And so when I got out of engineering school, I applied for engineering jobs, but everybody would interview me. I interviewed with ExxonMobil and Accenture and Chevron and all of these big companies looking for engineers. And then they would say, why do you want to be an engineer? And I would say, well, I don't. I would like to get into business. And they would look at me like, why are you here interviewing? And I'm sure a lot of them saw potential, but they were at Mines to hire engineers, and they did not want to hear I don't really want to be an engineer. Can we talk about other positions within the company? So I actually took a job with the company who I had interned with for my junior and senior year. And I was a staff engineer, and I hated it. It was miserable. I was so miserable. I was doing things that were not aligned with my talents and my dreams, but because I was good at math, I could do the job. And so it was a really, really tough time in my life well, actually for that first like 5 years after I graduated from college, I went through some really rough stuff.
It's impressive, but we have these limiting beliefs in our mind that if we go through something that we thought it was going to be good for us, and especially if it takes a lot of money and effort, and then you get it, and then you're horribly miserable.
Yeah.
You have this idea that because you already chose, you are stuck there forever. And that's the worst lie you can tell yourself. You can always break free into another life path. How did you broke out of that?
Well, I did two things. One, I decided that I was going to move to Texas. I spent my whole life in Colorado, and I got myself into some trouble in Colorado because I was in a dark place, and I had maybe friends. I wasn't friends with like the healthiest people. I actually developed some substance abuse issues, and so about a year after I graduated from college, I said, "That's it. I'm going to move to a place where I know no one. I'm going to start over." And when I moved to Austin, I did not apply for engineering jobs. I applied for operations or sales positions in technical companies. And so Eaton Corporation, huge manufacturing company, manufactures all kinds of things, but their electrical switchgear division hired me in operations management. And that's where I found my love for people management and the complex world of manufacturing. And so that was really helpful. But I was still stuck because even though I had a great job, I still had substance abuse issues. And so I lived kind of this dual life of building a successful career, but then I would just party really hard, and it was very, very destructive for me. So even though from a career perspective, I found something that was much more aligned with who I wanted to be and what my goals and talents and dreams were, I was still really stuck because I had never stopped to explore, who am I? Why am I making these decisions? Are there past trauma and issues that I need to deal with? Like, why am I using substances to numb myself? And it took about 5 years before I, finally hit rock bottom, and then decided that's it. I needed to break free from that part of my life too.
Now, substance abuse is so common these days, and it's all mental health issues. I call them demons, though.
Yeah.
Why demons? Because when you start doing something that is not good for your health or your family or your environment, and you kind of like it because it just takes away the pain from something else. That's, by the way, that's every addiction in this world is because somebody is in pain and they don't know how to get out of that pain. So they abuse substances to numb that pain. Yeah. And I'm saying these things because the definition for a demon for me is something that you keep doing that you don't want to do anymore.
Yep.
And it's horrible. And I didn't know that I had all these horrible patterns in my life. I was diagnosed with ADHD, and I didn't know that. Like, I discovered that last year. And very well, your demons don't have to be substance abuse. No. For me, it was overworking, over-exercising. I got to the point last year where I developed so much anemia that I had to get iron infusion right away. Yeah. And I was walking so much. I used to walk on a treadmill all the time because of COVID. We got, encapsulated for 2 years in Canada. So I bought a walking desk. I was doing 15, 20K a day, every single day of the week.
Yeah, that's too much. Well, and those are all addiction issues. The biggest thing is that about addiction is that it makes we like the way that it makes us feel, right? It's not usually the substance that we're addicted to, or the exercise, or the eating, or the shopping, or the gambling. We are addicted to the way it changes the way we feel. And I think that's a really important thing, because there's so much stigma around drug abuse and substance abuse. But really, so much of us can look at that and say over exercise, overeating, over buying, overspending, sex addiction. There's so much there. And we use it because we want to feel different than the way we feel in a given moment.
I know, it's crazy. So how do you get out of that trap?
I overdosed on Labor Day of 2006 and almost died. And that was when I said, that's it. And it wasn't almost dying that made me realize that this was not the life I wanted. It was the fact that I couldn't go to work. So I am so self-identified with my work. I've always been a hard worker. I watched my mom work 3 jobs while I was growing up. She put herself through college, driving 60 miles each way back and forth to be able to get a teaching degree so she could make a life better for herself. Like, I know how to work, and I love work. And I couldn't get out of bed to go to work for 3 days. And I nursed myself through my overdose. I shouldn't be alive. There's a reason why I'm here. Something, kept me from dying in that moment. And that was it for me. I said, that's it. I am not the person who does not go to work. I am not the person who calls in 3 days because of really stupid decisions that I make, because I don't want to face how miserable I am in life. And that's what made me change. And so I picked up the phone and I called my mom and I told her everything. And I said, I need to come home. And she said, yes. And she lives in Durango, Colorado. And so 6 weeks later, I was packed up and I had moved back home.
Did you quit your job?
I quit my job.
And do you follow any 12-step process? Like, do you use an institution to be able to put yourself together?
I didn't. So for 2 reasons. One, I was ashamed and I didn't want to talk about it. And 2, I also was determined to figure out how to do it on my own. I am a person who is self-reliant, and I said, I got myself into this. I'm going to try to get myself out of it. And I knew I needed to remove myself from that situation, right? It wasn't that I blamed anybody for my choices, or any of my friends, or any of that. I made my own choices, but removing yourself from a situation, removing yourself from the source of the addiction is a really fast way to change it. And a lot of reasons why rehab doesn't work is that you remove yourself from that situation, but then you go back, and then you have to, develop all kinds of tools and willpower to change your life. And so I just said, I'm just going to remove myself and see what I can do. But what saved me was 2 things. It was, 1, being back home with my mom. I realized that ever since I had left high school and went to mines, that I never felt like I belonged. I didn't want to be an engineer, but I'm in a school filled with engineers. And I went into an engineering job, and I went into a technical job, and I was always trying to mold myself to fit what I thought people wanted me to be. So I never felt like I belonged. And as soon as I was back home with my mom, I just felt safe to be myself. And then the founders of StoneAge took this huge risk and hired me. I had just turned 28. And all of a sudden I found purpose and meaning in my work. And so because I had, my heart was fuller, I had more reasons to not use, then it made it easier for me to just let it slip away. And it took a couple of years before I was completely clean, but it just faded. It faded because it was less important to me to numb myself, because I was living such a much more fulfilling life. And I think that's a really powerful story, because a lot of people, they use because they don't have purpose, they don't have meaning, they don't feel like they belong. Compound with trauma and abuse and other things, it can just lead to, really low self-esteem and trying to numb yourself. So, it was my mom and my job that saved my life.
Crazy. Many life lessons there. One of the things I would love to focus on is one of the demons that haunted me is the victim mentality. And that was one of the primary reasons you didn't have to go through a 12-step program, for example. By the way, that program is incredible. I never been to one, but I just interviewed a person. This is an amazing president of this organization, not for profit. They pick up homeless people on the street, especially men that are addicted to heroin. Yeah. And they become homeless because of their addiction. Yeah. And you know why he's the president? This company is big, like it's, you know, it's big. They hire a lot of people. It's a non-for-profit. He is the president of the company that saved him. This organization saved him. He was picked up. Yeah. He got cleaned. He went through the 12-step programs, and they teach you how to find God in there. Because the problem is, if you have this victimization mentality, regardless of how your childhood was, regardless if you were molested or God forbids all the horrible things that happens to some people, you inherit this mentality of victimization. And when you have this pattern, this thought pattern haunting you in your thoughts all the time, it justifies your ill behavior. If you have this voice in your head telling you, you deserve it because you were molested or because they weren't fair to you and because this and that, oh, you should do this because life is not fair.
Yeah.
That's the door to hell.
I so agree.
Somehow the Lord saved you from that pain, you know?
Yeah.
And it's beautiful. It's beautiful. Your mom has a lot to do with it because she was able to pick herself up and she was disciplined and she, you know, she got you through life even though she had very little to provide.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, let me tell you, this is the one thing that she said to me that was really profound. And I had never heard the word self-leadership, the concept of self-leadership until she said this to me. She said, yes, you can come home, but there's two rules. One, no drugs, and two, you have to get a job immediately when you get here, which was not going to be a problem. I mean, I love to work. But she said, you lament so much about how you want all of these things in your life and how that you want leadership roles and you want to grow. But let me tell you this, you can never be the leader that you have the potential to be until you learn how to lead yourself first. And you are leading yourself really, really poorly. You have to stop blaming everybody else for your problems. You have to understand that you are responsible for everything that happens in your life. Now, you're not responsible for childhood trauma, all those things that you truly were a victim of, but you don't have to be a victim of your own mindset. You can decide how you want to live your life despite all of those things. And so she was right. And I did make excuses about why I was doing the things that I was doing. And I blamed my dad and I blamed myself and I blamed my boyfriend. But really, it comes down to saying I'm responsible for everything that happens to me. And so that's when I started this journey of personal responsibility, what I call the ownership mindset, which I write about. With this whole idea that I can only empower myself when I take responsibility for everything that happens, even my mindset, when bad things happen to me that aren't my fault. I can still control how I respond to it. So it's what changed my life. It's having that mindset of I'm going to empower myself rather than be a victim.
Beautiful. I know that you touched, that you almost died. It's so funny because in my life experience, I have seen death at least 3 times very close to me. One of the hardest times was, I was a teenager. I went to friends overnight, just having a sleepover at my friend's house. And this van pulls over with 3-4 guys and they just start shooting automatic weapons at us. We were in the kitchen in front of the garage and they counted over 120 bullets that they fired at us. The kitchen had like long glass doors overlooking the garage, and all the bullets smashed the glass doors. But we went right down to we were right down to the floor as soon as I heard the first shot. And the car that was parked in front was an old Bronco, and they had converted that car into a propane tank, and they put the tank on the back of the car on top. and it's an SUV, right? One of the bullets was 2 centimeters above that gas tank. If it would have hit that gas tank, I would have been dead with my 2 friends. Over 120 bullets. Yeah, I think I was 15, 16 years old. And I tell you this because I'm a believer. I'm a born-again Christian. I found the Lord. And there has been so many places in my life where I can see the hand of God saying, it's not your time yet. It's not your time yet. And I see this umbrella of cover that says you have another chance. Go learn how to love. Go learn how to live the way I taught you to live. Go read your Bible. Go be a good person. Feed the hungry. Clothe the naked. Right? Be a light in this world.
Yep.
And it's exactly what happened to you. You got a second chance in life.
Yep.
What you did deserved death. What I did deserved death. For sure. Because I was there because we went out and, being teenagers, we were now getting drunk already. And there was a fight in the place that we were, and these people had guns and they followed us, and that's why they shoot. You see? So it's that divine grace that gives you second chances, because I truly believe the whole purpose of this life is learning how to love.
Yeah.
And if you learn how to love and you really remove yourself that victim mentality, then you can start being of value to other people, and that's how your life gets fulfilled. That's how you become a CEO. That's how you become a person of influence. If you really give to add value, sincerely, right?
I agree completely. And and I'm so glad you said that it starts with love. I totally agree. Like, love is the answer for everything. And I know some people, like, when, especially my company, when I'm like, I love you, and they like roll their eyes, but love is the answer for everything. And you have to start by learning how to love yourself. And that's where I started. You cannot shine and give your very best to the world if you hate yourself, if you are dealing with insecurities and self-sabotage and that negative self-talk. And so it's so important to do the work, to face those parts of yourself that you don't like, to say, okay, help me understand it, not to eradicate it, because let's face it, the dark parts of us are what make us human too, right? There cannot be light without dark. But that work on self-awareness, self-actualization, self-realization is so important, because, and it might seem selfish, but no, you can give so much more when you love yourself. You can love other people so much more when you love yourself. And that's what I really had to do. I had to pick up my broken life and learn how to love myself, so that I could be of service to other people, rather than just a service to my ego and to my addiction. And so that's where I started, was, all right, how do I start to face these demons? I call them gremlins, these gremlins that keep me attached to my ego, keep me attached to, material things, to caring about what people think, and all of those things. And I had to understand them and then love them, so that I could finally break free of how they were holding me back.
I really like the way you said it, that without darkness, there's no light. And yes, we are born and we are complete light. And through the life that we experience, we get full of darkness. So the whole process of being on this earth is the process of cleansing ourselves from the darkness and become light. And that process materializes when we actually die and we are in front of our Creator and say, Lord, this is what I did. I'm sorry for the things that I didn't do. Hopefully you do that before you die, right? But going back to the whole love scenario, I felt for the last 4 years, I felt into something called fake love. I fell into a sect, a New Age sect, that provided love and compassion for me. I was for very rich people. And I thought I belonged there. And they showed love, but it wasn't really love. Because as soon as I got there, they're starting to introduce psychedelics and other types of substances that I have never done in my life, ever. I was the guy that had a glass of wine. Yeah, maybe, when I was a kid, I got drunk a few times. I mean, abusing substances wasn't in my DNA. I don't have this addicted personality. And thank God I never got addicted to the stuff that they gave me. But they fake light dresses as fake love. And then I got full of darkness. And it manifested in a way of ego, because I thought they made me feel that I was better than everybody else. And I was so egocentric and egotistic, and but I thought I was giving love to people. And all I was doing was serving myself to make people think that I was better than they were. I was the biggest narcissist. I became a horrible narcissist. And then my wife, God bless her soul, she should have just fired me many times ago. But what she did is she went back to her faith. She started praying. She started praying for me. She got people to pray for me. She started opening my eyes on what I was doing in this cult. Because the saddest part is that I accepted Jesus in my heart since I was 16 years old, but I completely fell away from faith because of love of money, because of the victim mentality, because of all these demons that have been haunting me all my life. But even these demons don't have any, they cannot make us do something that we don't want to. So we're still responsible, you see? Regardless of the mental illness, I ended up in a psychiatrist. And when this guy, by the way, this guy was afraid, thank God, this guy told me, David, what you have is ADHD, but that doesn't make you clean of your sins, because otherwise there wouldn't be jails full of psychopaths that commit horror sins in the world.
Yep.
And then, what I did is I went back to my faith and started reading the scriptures, started reading the Bible. And everything points back to love. And that's why I'm talking about this. Listen to what this says. When Jesus was on earth, he was trying to teach people how to love unconditionally. He was the guy that said, if somebody smacks you on the one side of your cheek, turn the other cheek. He doesn't say smack them back. And this is what the problem we have in society right now, especially in North America. We're so polarized. We can never express what we think because people will just beat us to death because they don't believe what we believe. It's not love.
No.
So while he was teaching this, there were a lot of religious people that were not loved. They were just egocentric, narcissistic, just like I was. So they were trying to make him to fail in his teachings. So one of them asked him, what is really out of the 10 commandments, I think most people know about the 10 commandments. He said, what of the 10 commandments, what are the most important ones? And he said, love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And the second is like it. Love your neighbor as you love yourself. And this is the most important part. All the law of Moses and the prophets hang on these two commandments. So if you don't have the capacity to remember 10 commandments, which is pretty simple actually, but guilty as charged. I asked myself, where were 3 days ago, and I only remember 8. Right? But if you remember these two, love your neighbor as you love yourself. Now, why is the second one? Because if you don't love God with all your might and all your heart and all your mind, you don't really know what true love is, because God loves us unconditionally. If you only love your neighbor as you love yourself, but you don't know how to love God, you're going to love very poorly, because you will not love yourself. You will hate yourself. Actually, most people learn to hate themselves because they get into these habits that they cannot get out. And it's like, I hate myself. I cannot control myself.
Yep.
When all you have to do is surrender to love, surrender to God.
Yep. Yeah.
Thank you so much for the lesson, Kerry.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Well, I am glad to be able to share my story and talk about love. I think it's really important. One of the things I've been working on, in my own journey is this whole idea of absolute acceptance, because when we don't accept things about ourselves or other people, right, that leads to judgment. It leads to comparison. It leads to wanting. It leads to separation, right? I'm better than that person. And so every time I feel like a judgmental thought pop into my head about somebody or a situation or myself, I say absolute acceptance. Like, how do I just accept for, because it's not my place to judge. It's my place to love, to give space to, I don't know, people's journeys and people's stories. And so how do I just practice absolute acceptance? And it doesn't mean that I don't make decisions. It doesn't mean, as a leader, right, sometimes I have to let people go, but I can still accept that person with absolute acceptance, but still say, this isn't the right fit for you here. And so that's a really powerful way to check yourself when you start to feel judgmental or, start to say judgmental things, is like, how am I practicing absolute acceptance? Do I actually know what's going on? Do I know that story? Do I know why that person's doing that? No, I don't. Practice absolute acceptance. It's been a real game changer. I like it better than radical acceptance. I think there's a book out there called Radical Acceptance, but I just like this absolute because it's just like definitive. Like, no, absolutely. Yeah. I'm just accepting. And I think that helps people. Then it helps you be able to come from a place of, okay, non-judgment and love versus judging, comparison, keeping ourselves separate that is causing all these societal issues right now. At least in part.
And it's funny because you're talking, scripture wisdom. Mm-hmm. What you're saying is, how can you judge somebody that has a speck in their eye when you haven't seen the log that you have in your own eye?
Yeah, exactly.
And the process of repentance, right, is accepting what you did. If you don't accept what you did, it's because you're still blaming it on somebody else. Mm-hmm. Regardless of your traumas, right? You can say, okay, I accept that I did all this, because acceptance is just having an inventory of all the stuff that is in your life that you like and that you don't like. You accept it. You say, okay, I'm up at this point. This is the stuff that I love about me. This stuff that I need to work on. And then you can move on and start working on the other things that need fixing. And that's the process of getting away from that darkness in you.
Yeah. Well, and then it's one step further. And this is what I've been really practicing. It's having gratitude for those. I had somebody ask me the other day, I'm in YPO, Young Presidents Organization, and we were doing icebreaker kind of experience share questions. And the question that came to me was, if you could take one day back in your life, what day would it be? And I shared that it was the day that my brother tried to commit suicide, because not a whole lot of good has come from that. And then somebody who knows my story afterwards said, why didn't you say, I couldn't believe that you didn't say it was the day that you overdosed. And I was like, are you kidding? I am so grateful for that day. I would not change anything, because even though I was in a really dark place and I didn't like who I was and I was lost, that was the catalyst. That was the inflection point for me to change my life. And I would not be sitting here today doing what I'm doing if that wouldn't have happened. So why would I have regret over that? So I even have more than acceptance. Like, I have gratitude for it. And so, as my good friend Chris Shembra says, he wrote a book called Finding Good in the hard, or Finding Gratitude in the Hard Times. When you can find gratitude for the challenges that life throws at you, for adversity, that is how you can truly use it to propel you forward, because I'm not the victim mentality. I'm grateful for it happened because I made these different choices because of it.
Beautiful. Another huge key. Thank you for that. Mm-hmm. If you believe that your life purpose is this process of sanctification, which means, all that means is learning how to love the way God loves. If you think that's your life purpose, you know that every life experience that you go through is going to be better for you, is going to be better for your future. So you grab those mistakes and you are thankful for them. Mm-hmm. Because the only way that you can actually say, I'm going to get better, is by realizing how to be bad, right?
Yeah.
It's like you were saying, how can you differentiate light from darkness? Yeah. Sometimes you have to fall, and sometimes you have to hit rock bottom.
Yeah. I agree.
And yes. So if you think that this life is a school of learning how to love, this school has levels. And each level, this is good. Each level needs to pass a test to go to the next level, like university.
Yeah.
So that if you are stuck in a loop, in a vicious circle of patterns and wrong behaviors is because you haven't passed the test.
Yep.
Once you make a different choice, then you move up to the next test, a better choice, if you will.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And that's how you get to the top.
I agree.
What was the first, like after your situation, moving back home, moving back to Colorado, what was your first job title?
Director of operations.
But you moved right into operations. So you had operations experience before then, right?
Mm-hmm.
The other company.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah.
How big was the company back then?
8 million in revenue. So we were tiny.
You were director of operations and you were 28 years old.
28, and then a year after I started, they promoted me into general manager, and then a year and a half after that into CEO. So in less than 3 years of me coming on board, which was 3 years and 3 months from my overdose, I was named CEO.
That's wonderful. How long have you been in that role?
14 years, almost 14 years.
You see, that speaks tons about your life experience. And this podcast is becoming pretty good, actually. If people listen to this and they apply these lessons to their life, they could save tens of years in their learning process.
Yes, they can.
Because guess what? The fastest you pass that test that I'm telling you about, the fastest you grow in your levels. Yeah. That doesn't mean you need to be stuck in a loop for 10 years. You could actually pass 5 tests in 1 year.
Yep. Yeah, you just got to be willing to do the work. Yeah. Yeah.
Did you study, like, how do you get to become a CEO within 3 years?
I worked hard. I was curious, and I was making an impact. People liked working for me, and the founders wanted to go do other things. And so, it was a perfect combination of, I think, my personality, my drive, and the way that I worked with the team and the way the team worked with me, that made it a winning, a winning solution for them. I made a ton of mistakes, being a young CEO and really growing up in the company. But yeah, I attribute it to curiosity, humility, working really, really, really hard, and building the team. I built an amazing team around me. And so when you build a great team that's successful, it's easier to be successful as the leader. So that's the work that I did in those first 3 years.
What's the essence of building a great team? And I ask this question because the success of a company is the how high the team works together, how well the team works together.
Oh, I write about this in my book, The Ownership Mindset, about how do you build a team, because I believe that the number one job of a leader is to unleash the potential of the people on their team, not just in their work, but in their lives, right? How we all work for a reason, and it's to be able to go after our dreams. So if you can help people be their very best, do their very best work, so that they can live the dreams that they want, that they've set out for themselves, then that is what a powerful leader does. And when you do that, you drive results, because you have employees who are loyal, who are engaged, who believe in the mission, who find meaning and purpose in their work. So, how do you do that? That's a lot harder. That takes a lot of time and trial and error. But, understanding, where the team needs to go, understanding so that you can get the right people and the right seats on the bus, understanding people's strengths and weaknesses and aligning their roles with their strengths. Like, none of us are ever good when we have to focus on our weaknesses, right? We only are mediocre at what we do. When you can help people align their talents and skills with their role, then they feel more satisfied at work. Regular communication, building relationships, trusting them, giving them autonomy, right? It just takes these steps to be able to build that team, but it has to come from a place of humility. When leaders are trying to build themselves up first, then they're never going to build as strong of a team as they could. If they focus on building the very best team around them, helping their people grow and develop, and making sure that you've got those right skills and talents, and you put yourself last as a leader, then you're going to be so much more successful. But a lot of leaders can't do that, right? A lot of leaders are like, nope, I'm top dog. I'm here for a reason. I have to be the smartest person in the room. And I learned that I'm not the smartest person in the room. I'm smart at a few things, So I can contribute in that way, but then let everybody else be smart in their areas. And that's how we build a really successful team.
It's interesting because that's called servant leadership. There's a movement there about servant leadership. Actually, I'm making a business entrepreneurs group called Owners in Faith. And that's one of the foundations. How do we actually make sure that not only yourself as the business owner, but all from the CEO all the way down to the lowest position in the company, they have this servant leadership attitude. Being the bottom, like the bottom of the barrel, being how can I actually serve others while doing my job the best I can. A book that really resonates with me about that is Leaders Eat Last. Have you read it?
Oh, yes. I'm a big Simon Sinek fan.
Very good book. And it talks the truth. And it's funny because if you look back, going back to scriptures, the best servant leader that we ever had was the life of Jesus Christ during those 33 years. He really showed how to be a great leader, completely humble. My business should have been 100 times bigger, but it wasn't because I thought I was the smartest person in the room. Because I didn't know that I have this demon telling me that I was the best, and I was egocentric and narcissistic, and that the company will die if I wouldn't be there, and that everything. So all that did was hinder my growth. So I've been in business for 18 years. Don't get me wrong. I run seven businesses now, and my company is good. At 18 years in tech, come on, right? I could have been a $1 billion company, but it's because of the ego that the Lord didn't allow me to go that far until I learned my lesson, right?
Yeah, the ego, we need it, right? It keeps us safe. It's never about eradicating the ego. It's learning how to play nice with it. That's how I look at it, right? I never want a part of me to be eradicated or go. It's how do I keep my garden, keep my garden weeded, pull out those weeds, which are the ego, and say, okay, these ones are going to live. And how do I play nice with this? Because, our ego can do a lot of, my ego can, my drive is very much attached to my ego, but how do I use that to propel me forward, but never, ever let it overcome humility and transparency and impact and be of service to others. And so it's a fine dance that you have to do. And to me, that's what this journey is about, is how do you find that dance so that you use your ego to be powerful and impactful, but never to let it overcome the light part of you, the servant part of you, to really help other people grow, develop, live better lives.
You're right. The ego is the self. This is what gives you an identity, but it can quickly go out of control. And when it goes out of control, it starts with fear. Do you know that? Ego is just always fear, covered in fear. But then you forget about the fear and you get this horrible personality that people start to hate. You know what I do all the time to manage that balance? I say, the minute that I start thinking that people should be thankful to me and not me thankful to them, my ego is out of control again. If I think I deserve to get the praise, I'm done.
Totally.
I'm too much, right?
Yeah, that's good. It's good to have those checks. Like for me, it's when I'm resisting something, and resistance can be pushing and pulling. So when I'm really trying to push an idea or push myself forward, push myself through, or when I'm pulling back, right? I get defensive. I don't like that idea, or I don't like what that person just said. So I call it, when I feel the resistance, that's when I know that my ego is getting out of alignment. And so my whole goal in life is to flow. And that's really hard because I am an intense person who's driven. I do a lot of things. And so it's a real challenge for me to be at ease, to be cool, calm, and collected, to just let things unfold, because I really don't have that much control over anything, even though I would like to think I do. And so, my mantra is cool, calm, collected, be at ease, right? Be like like a river, be like water. How do you go with the ebb and the flow, and instead of trying to orchestrate outcomes, like force this or pull back here? So I know my ego is out of alignment when I start to feel resistance, and it happens daily, right? I mean, it's daily where I'm like, ooh, get it in check.
Yeah, I do the same thing, but based on faith. So basically, all I do is when things arrive, I say, Lord, I put it to your feet. Deal with this. Because when I get too logical is when I start messing things up. If I get too logical, that means that my head is in it, and my ego says that I can solve it. I say, I'll give it to you, and then I give it to my employees, and then it gets solved. Or the worst fears never materialize.
No,
and
we are so
you're worrying all this time for something that never happened.
I know. Oh, our human brains are they trick us all the time.
Kerry, thank you so much for your time. I don't want to over abuse it. Quick question, last question.
Yes.
If you had access to a billboard in front of the busiest highway on earth, what would you write in it?
Oh, what would I write on it? Love. Love is the answer for everything. You know, it is. If we all just loved each other instead of judged each other and hated each other, especially when we're so dang similar, the world would be such a much better place. We wouldn't have all of this fear and strife and conflict and poverty. Love. It's the answer for everything.
You know, the worst thing in your life will be to say to yourself, I conquered the world, but I lost my soul.
Yeah.
And most people, not most people, but a lot of people, especially very successful people, when they are in the deathbed, that's the regret.
Yep.
I'd rather go out penniless and saying, my soul is fine. It is well with
I know my soul. You know, that's the biggest thing. I think a lot of people, you say they lost their soul, but I think so many people don't even stop to take the time to know it. I think people think that they are their ego, right? They are their thoughts. They are their actions, and that's not true.
I call it worldly addiction. So you get addicted to your body and to the material things that surround you. So you don't have a time to really check who's controlling the body, who's controlling the brain, who's controlling the thoughts. I mean, the thoughts come in, but you have the power to say, thought, go away. And to replace it with a positive thought, right?
Yep. I'm with you.
Thank you so much. Tell me, you said you had a book. Is it out? Where can people find your book?
My book is out on October 17th. It's called The Ownership Mindset, a handbook for transforming your life and leadership. You can find it on Amazon or Barnes & Nobles or at any major bookstores. But if you go to Amazon or Barnes & Noble and type in The Ownership Mindset, Kerry Siggins, you will be able to find it. And I'm super excited about it. It shares, much of my life journey and philosophy on developing personal responsibility and how I've woven that into self-leadership and then into leading others to grow this amazingly beautiful company, StoneAge, that, I'm an owner of with all of my fellow employee owners because we're all owners of the company. And so it's my creative endeavor and gift to any leader who's looking to become more personally responsible, accountable, and change their lives and the way they lead.
Beautiful. Well, this podcast sure will help, and we'll make sure that a lot of people that needs it will actually have it. It's going to be on YouTube and everybody what people listen to podcasts. So thank you so much for being in the show, Kerry. If people like to find more about you or like ask more questions, where can they find you online?
Yeah, please reach out. I love connecting with people. So LinkedIn is the easiest way on social media, Kerry Siggins, or you can go to my website, which is kerrysiggins.com, KerrySiggins, in case you're just listening. And all my contact information is there, information about the book. I have a podcast called Reflect Forward, which David, you have to come on and share your story. Pleasure. You have to come on my IoT podcast too. So we're gonna be colluding here on some of these things. But anyway, you can find out about all of that on my website at KerrySiggins.com.
Super, Kerry. Thank you so much. God bless, and have a wonderful rest of the week.
Thank you. You too.
Cheers.
That's all for today's episode of the Break Free Podcast. Head on over to iTunes and subscribe to the show. Starting your own business can be tough, but it doesn't have to be. Visit davidmansilla.com to pick up a copy of the #1 international best-selling book, Breaking Out of Corporate Jail. Expand what you consider to be possible and reach your full potential. And join us on the next episode.